Greetings, friends. Welcome back to the broadcast. I'm Shawn. Website can be found at scriptureandprophecy.com. That's where you find the archives, and that's where you go to support this mission of truth. Today, we're actually going to start our week with a gospel reflection. We're going to be looking at chapter 7 of the book, The Gospel of Matthew. Now, I do have plans at some point before the year's over to revisit the Gospel of Matthew in its entirety. But I just felt led to deal with chapter 7 today. But I want to start with actually the last handful of verses of chapter 7 to kind of set the stage, and you'll see why here in just a minute. Just a quick reminder, this broadcast is 100% listener supported. It cannot survive without your support, and I'm very grateful for those of you who do. And of course, your prayers are incredibly important and incredibly valuable to me. So I appreciate your support in those areas. Let's start the Gospel of Matthew chapter 7, but I'm going to start, like I said, with the back end of it. So we're going to start with verses 21 through 29. Open up your hearts. Let's begin. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he that does the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? And I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. Therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. But anyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like the foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell again, and great was its fall. And so it was when Jesus had ended these sayings that the people were astonished at his teaching. For he taught them as one having authority, and not as one of the scribes. All right, so the context here is Jesus has spent, if you're reading the scriptures, chapter 5 all the way through the end of chapter 7, giving instruction, giving commandments. And he says, if you have heard all of this that I have said, all these lists of commandments and instructions, and you actually do them, you're a wise person. You're like the person who built his house on the rock. And when the trouble comes, when tribulation comes, you have that solid foundation. But if you're one of those wide road Christians, and you'll see here in a minute why I'm using that phrase, you're like, and you don't obey, you're like someone who built their house on the sand, and when the trouble comes, the house falls, and it doesn't just fall, but it has a very great fall, he says. But right before that, he says something else to kind of go in with this, right? The same idea. He gives them all this instruction, gives us all this teaching, and he says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but those who actually do the will of my Father. In fact, he says, verse 20, many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, haven't I prophesied in your name, or cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? They're going to say, haven't we done all these things in your name? What do you mean we don't get to enter in? He says, and I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. This whole ending is about walking in obedience to Christ. And those who don't, he doesn't know. Remember, he says, my sheep hear my voice. He says, you won't enter in if you don't do the will of my Father. And the condemnation here is get away from me, depart from me, you who work iniquity, you who do lawlessness. And then immediately following that, he says, those who practice what I've taught are the ones who've built their house on the rock, and those who don't are the ones who've built their house on the sand. Now, today we're not going to be covering all of these things that he's talking about in this context that starts in chapter 5. We're just going to read the ones in chapter 7. But I want you to open up your hearts, because this is very serious. And I just have to say one more thing before we get started. I realize that at times I can be really harsh, specifically towards like modern Western Christianity here in America. More specifically towards kind of like your non-denominational churches. The reason for that is a couple of reasons. The first reason is that that's my experience, right? I grew up in the West. My church experience is I started off in a Baptist church, but most of my Christian walk has taken place inside a non-denominational evangelical style of church. That's where I did my volunteering. That's where I hosted small groups out of my house for years. That's my experience. And so I'm critical of it because of what we're getting about to read here. Because I believe that to their detriment, they promote a wide road theology to the congregants. But I want to be clear that that's my background. And so if your background is that as well, I don't mean to come off as condemning you or saying that these churches are all bad and all this stuff. That's not what I mean. And so I wanted to say that because I fear that maybe that comes across that way. And really, it's just I love the people in these churches. Many of them I've spent a lot of time, a lot of my life with. And I fear for other people within the congregation because of the wide road kind of approach to theology and kind of the entertainment style of worship. And really, it's just about that concern. It's not that I think they're all bad and I can't... Yeah. And so I just wanted to be clear about that because I'm sure some of you are in these kinds of churches, and I don't want to offend you. I just want to warn you or give you a contrast between what's true according to Scripture and what you could be seeing in some of those churches. Okay. Let's begin. Chapter 7, the Gospel of Matthew. Verse 1. Do not judge, so that you in turn may not be judged. For you will be judged in the same way that you judge others, and the measure that you use for others will be used to measure you. Why do you take note of the splinter in your brother's eye, but you do not notice the wooden plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me remove that splinter from your eye, while all the time the wooden plank remains in your own? You hypocrite! First, remove the wooden plank from your own eye. Then you will be able to see clearly enough to remove the splinter from your brother's eye. So this whole concept, because you'll hear a lot, like if you point out somebody's grotesque behavior, you'll hear, don't judge, right? The teaching here is, or the warning here is, be careful about making judgments, because that measure that you're using to judge your brothers and sisters, that's the measure that will be used to judge you. So you better be very careful about that. I try to take this attitude of, I'm really hard on myself, but I try to extend as much grace and mercy as I can to others. I think that's a good Christian concept. And because that's the attitude I want God to have towards me, that His mercies are new every morning, and that He's full of grace and mercy where I'm concerned. And so if I want that from God, then I need to extend that to others. Even the Lord's Prayer, right? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. So we need to be quick to extend mercy. We're so worried about the plank or the speck in our brother's eyes. We got a plank in our own, and we risk being hypocrites. So before we go to our brother and have anything to say about his lifestyle, we better start by looking in the mirror. And then Jesus says, once you've removed the plank from your own eye, then you'll be in a position where now you can go to your brother and help him remove the speck from his own. But be careful, that measure will be measured unto you. And then he follows it up with something very interesting. And we should also note that when we get to chapter 15 is when he starts talking about you'll know them by their fruits. So it's like, well, which is it? Well, we need the context. Verse 6, listen to this. So he says, you will see fit to remove the splinters from your brother's eye. Verse 6, do not give to dogs anything that is holy, and do not cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and proceed to tear you to pieces. So we'll see from context, Jesus isn't really saying you're not allowed to make judgments. He's saying be careful about how you do that, because that's the same manner that you're going to be judged. You're better off just not doing it. But then he says, don't cast your pearls before, don't give your pearls to dogs and cast them before swine. He's talking about the sacred things, the sacred Christian mysteries, the sacraments like the Lord's Supper. Let me give you an example. The Apostle Paul warns, do not even take the Lord's Supper if there's any risk that maybe you're taking it in an unworthy manner. Maybe your lifestyle has not been holy and you've been living in sin or whatever. There's great reverence for the sacrament of communion. And to not have that reverence or to take it unworthily leads to destruction. Here's what he says, the Apostle Paul, 1 Corinthians. Therefore, whoever eats this bread and drinks this cup of the Lord in an unworthy manner will be guilty of the body and the blood of the Lord. That's severe. You take it unworthily, you're guilty of the body and blood of the Lord. Think about how serious this is. But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of the bread and drink of the cup. For he who eats and drinks in an unworthy manner eats and drinks judgment to himself, not discerning the Lord's body. For this reason many are weak and sick among you, and many sleep. For if we would judge ourselves, we would not be judged, but when we are judged, we are chastened by the Lord, that we may not be condemned with the world. Most Christian traditions, up until the last 100 years, you couldn't even participate in communion unless you had been catechized by the church and confirmed by the church as a member. And the reason wasn't to do some kind of weird exclusivity thing. It's because it was to protect those who might take the sacrament unworthily and heap damnation on themselves. Let me give you a quick little commentary from the Orthodox. Here's what they say. Dogs and swine refer to heathen peoples. See Philippians chapter 3 verse 2 says, beware of dogs, beware of evildoers, beware of the concision. And in Revelation chapter 22 says, for without are dogs and sorcerers and whoremongers and murderers and idolaters and whosoever loveth and maketh a lie. But would also include Jews who do not practice virtue. According to the fathers, dogs are those so immersed in evil that they show no hope of change, while swine are those who habitually live immoral and impure lives. The pearls are the inner mysteries of the Christian faith, including Christ's teachings and the great sacraments. These holy things are restricted from the immoral and the unrepented, not to protect the holy things themselves, for Christ needs no protection. Rather, we protect the faithless people from the condemnation that would result from holding God's mysteries in contempt. So that is what the scriptures teach, and what the ancient, readings of the fathers teach, is that this is what this means. We don't let people who are immersed in evil, people who show no hope of change, people who are who live in habitual immoral lives, participate in those things. They have to repent. It's very simple. Continuing on, verse 7. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened for you. For everyone who asks will receive, and those who seek will find. And to those who knock on the door it will be opened. Is there anyone among you who would give a stone to his son if he asked for bread, or hand him a snake if he asked for a fish? If you then, despite your evil nature, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him? So that's pretty clear, right? Seek God. And really, if you look at the kind of the grammar there, it's more like a present progressive, meaning be asking, be seeking, be knocking. It's kind of a posture. It's kind of like saying, be the type of Christian who's constantly knocking, constantly seeking, constantly coming before God. And he says, you who are evil, because that's humanity, we just are, if you, being evil, still have enough compassion and love to be able to give good gifts to your own children, how much more is that true about God? Verse 12. In everything, deal with others as you would like them to deal with you. This is the law of the prophets. Very simple, the golden rule. Everyone knows the golden rule, right? Treat others as how you would want to be treated. Extend grace, extend mercy, extend love. All these things that you would want to receive from others, do for them. Now, listen closely. Enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the road is broad that leads to destruction, and those who enter through it are many. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and those who find it are few in number. The King James says, narrow is the path and difficult is the way. So we go back to my discussion as we started the podcast, my harping on modern Western evangelicalism. My biggest harp is they teach, not all, but many, teach wide road theology. The Bible, Christ himself teaches narrow road theology. He says most people are on this wide road to destruction. But the road that leads to life is narrow, and the way is difficult, and there are few who find it. And we just read the ending of this study. We read it to start. We're going to read it again here in a minute, where he's warning, not everyone who calls me Lord gets in, but those who do the will of my Father. Depart from me, I never knew you, you who practice lawlessness. Those who actually take what I say and apply it to their lives. They're wise. They're like those who built their house on a rock, but those of you who hear these words, ignore them, go do your own thing, you're like a fool who built his house on sand. Obedience to Christ matters. The Apostle John says this is how we know that we love God, that we obey His commandments, and His commandments are not grievous. If we go back to chapter 6, part of this whole section, Jesus says those who break the commandments and teach others to do so will be the least in the kingdom. But those who obey the commandments and teach others to do so will be great. Obedience. And obedience is not just, I said the sinner's prayer and believed. It's living out the Christian life that Christ and the apostles commanded us to live. It's not easy. Narrow is the road, and difficult is the way, and few there are that find it. Verse 15, be on guard against false prophets, who come to you disguised in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. By their fruits you will know them. Does one pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? In the same way, every good tree that bears good fruit, but a rotten tree produces bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus by their fruits you will know them. So, just a few minutes ago he says, don't judge. Right? But there is something that you are to be quick to pay attention to. That are those who come in God's name. Teachers, pastors, those who claim to be prophets. Be on guard. Examine their fruit. Do they practice what they preach? Is it all just for show? Are they really here just to fill the room full of humans so they can get rich? Are they actually shepherding people to Christ and teaching them to do and obey everything that He taught? Or are they trying to tickle your ears? Because a true shepherd will tell you the hard things. A false shepherd, they will tell you the things that you want to hear. Because it's in their benefit to do so. They come disguised in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. By their fruits you will know them. Now the words that we started with follow directly after this. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my heavenly Father. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? Did we not drive out demons in your name? Did we not perform many miracles in your name? And then I will say to them plainly, I never knew you. Depart from me, you evil doers. Everyone who hears these words of mine and acts in accordance with them will be like a wise man who constructed his house on a rock foundation, and the rain came down, the flood, and the water rose, and fierce winds battered that house. However, it did not collapse because it had its foundation on rock. In contrast, everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act in accordance with them will be like the fool who constructed his house on a foundation of sand. The rain came down, the flood, the water rose, the winds blew and buffeted that house, and it collapsed with a great crash. When Jesus had finished his discourse, the crowds were astonished at his teachings, because he taught them as one who had authority and not as one of their scribes. I pray that you've been blessed this morning. Thank you for listening. Thank you for praying for me, and those of you who support the mission of truth. Couldn't do this without you. I know that this is going to go forth and pierce hearts, because I've just felt led to cover it. And it was, anytime I have to go off my normal schedule and do something different, I know that the Lord is going to do a work with it. And so I pray that your hearts have been pierced and that you've been convicted to walk in a holy righteous manner after Christ and obey his teachings. Peace and grace be with all of you, and until next time, God bless.